You're listening to The Safety and the Sportswriter on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good evening, everybody. We are back on the 17th of June, Thursday evening, back here on The Safety and the Sportswriter. Talk to you about the world of sports. A hell of a lot going on in the NBA. Got a few firings to talk about. Got a lot of things off the court and on the court. Got some, other things going on around the NBA, the crisis in baseball about whether you're going to let these pitchers keep on cheating. We maybe touch a little bit on that. We got football to get to. We got a lot to get to tonight. But basically, NBA is really front and center with us tonight. And, I don't know, when we were talking about it before we came on the air, I think a lot's going to depend on the medical staffs of all the teams at this point. What do you think?
Yeah, it also is going to depend on who's going to step up. I mean, I hear the noise, and there has been a lot of injuries, and I think it does partially have to do with the quick turnaround. But what are they going to do? Not play this year? Shorten the season? I mean, these players agreed to the plan. They signed off on it. I mean, the players' union agreed to all this, so you can't complain about it after the fact. After you agreed to it, signed the deal, and then took the money, you can't complain like LeBron's doing after his team loses. In LeBron's instance, it didn't matter whether he was 100% and AD was 100%. They still weren't beating that Suns team. The Suns were the better team, and the Lakers got their ass kicked. So, I hate to break it to them, but it had nothing to do with health in that one. And then, you look at the Nets, and, they basically played without two of the three the other night, and it didn't matter. It's about stepping up right now, and that's going to be the theme of this show is, who's stepping it up, because that I'm not the biggest Kevin Durant fan, but 49, 17, and 10 when Kyrie Irving's out and James Harden's basically a decoy out there. He got it done, and that's what it comes down to is who can get it done in the second half, in the fourth quarter, who can hit shots, who can defend, and Kevin Durant was doing both. Not only was he hitting every shot down the stretch, which, my God, he did. He made almost every shot that he took in crunch time, and then he had 3 or 4 blocks in the fourth quarter. So he was not only playing defense and contributing on offense, but he was also playing defense and leading the charge at both ends. I mean, good Lord, he finished 16 of 23 from the field. That's big time.
Well, I mean, I totally agree. It was a great performance by Kevin Durant. But the one thing around here, I don't know what you're getting down in your neck of the woods, but around here, it's like the first time the people are making it seem like it's the first time they've ever seen a player do this. I mean, I spent years watching Jordan do it night in and night out in the playoffs for the Bulls. One of the first memories of watching basketball was the Willis Reed game and watching Walt Frazier go 36, 19, and 7 in a game 7 to beat the Lakers against Jerry West and Wilt Chamberlain. So I mean, I remember Magic Johnson his rookie year when Kareem was out with the bad ankle, and he played center and point guard and had 45 points against the Sixers in the 7th game to help the Lakers win. So it's the thing about it is it was a great performance, but the way they're making it out to be, the way some of the pundits have said, well, this springboards him over LeBron or this and that. You look, Kevin Durant, we know he's a quality player. We know what he can do. But also, Kevin Durant seems to do it when he wants to do it. He has to be forced to do it. And he came through. And God bless him. Now, it's up to him to show the way the rest of the playoffs. I don't think Kyrie Irving is coming back, if at all, to the finals. And James Harden seems to be more on one leg than anything. I mean, watching him play a little bit the other night, I'm not the big basketball fan you are, and I was flipping back and forth, but definitely it wasn't the regular James Harden. So I'm not saying he has to pull 49 or 50 out of his butt, but he has to be the guy to go to in crunch time again and come through. And the flip side of that coin is just what is up with Giannis? I mean, he doesn't seem to want to be the star.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point about the can he do it? Can he do it again? Can he do it 2 times in a row? Can he close out the Bucks? I'll put that, but I'm not ready to anoint him as of yet. And I think we have seen this before. We've seen big players step up in big games. I mean, that's what the NBA is. So yeah, hell yeah, we've seen it before. But I think people were making a big deal about it because we weren't really sure what we were going to get with Durant. He missed a lot of games this year. He's coming back from a big injury. He had to produce in a big way on a big stage, and he finally did that. So as much as I want to criticize him, I can't really do that now. But, yeah, I mean, Giannis played pretty good until the fourth quarter, and I don't understand, he choked. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. He got the ball. Middleton drove to the goal, dished it to him. He had a wide-open dunk, and he drops the basketball. I mean, he hits that shot, and it's a tie game. And you miss it, and it's over because then you have to foul, and everybody on their team can hit free throws. But he can't. He stands there for 10 minutes trying to decide how to shoot it. I think he needs to go quicker because he's taking all this time to shoot the free throws, and it doesn't work. So just go ahead and shoot it quicker so you don't get the 10-second, runoff. I mean, at least shoot it and try. I don't know, man. He's I think the MVP was given to him a little prematurely because this is his team, and he had the opportunity to step up and win the game, and he didn't do it.
Well, I mean, there were critics when he was getting the MVP and everything, the traveling, and the Greek Freak is allowed to play with the rules a little bit. But, I mean, he does have the total game. It's just like you said. And Embiid did the same thing. In the fourth quarter, they don't seem to want the ball. It's okay when they're up by 10. It's okay when they're up by 7. But if they're behind or if the game's on the line, they seem to shy away from it. They want nothing to do with having to take that shot. And that's the difference between your superstars and your all-time players. Your all-time players look for that shot. They're about that shot. They don't want anybody else taking that shot. They begrudgingly give it up when they're double teamed. So, it is the talk of where their heart is right now, and we're going to have to see. And both of them right now, they're up against it.
Well, they were both getting the ball. I mean, they were both getting the ball. I mean, they were both taking the shots. They just, in Embiid's case, he couldn't make any. I don't know what the hell happened to him at halftime, but he came out at halftime and he couldn't make a shot. I think he started 0 for 10. Not last night, but the previous game, he came out and started 0 for 10 in the second half. And you can't do that, man. I mean, they had a chance. They could be done right now and resting.
But don't you think he a big guy, and how much I didn't like Shaq's game. Maybe at that point in the second half, you see the game slipping away from you. Go to the hoop. Don't settle for the 15-foot jump shot. Don't settle for the fadeaway. Get in there, make contact, get a foul, get yourself on the line. He seems to, at certain points, go into this, I don't want to say coast mode, but he seems to fall in love with his jumper in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes he does, but for the game winner, he had a point-blank layup, and he choked it. I mean, I do think he does. He settles for the jumper too often, and he should go to the basket more, and he should get the ball. They should start him off down in the block, and why they end up, getting him outside and starting him up top so often, I don't understand. But at the end of the game, they ran a great play, and he could have dunked it. and he decided to try and lay it in, and he missed it. And if you're not healthy enough to make that shot, you shouldn't be on the court.
Right.
And I didn't understand what was going on with him. And obviously I'm talking about, game 4, not game 5, but wow. I mean, in game 5, how do you lose a 26-point lead? I mean, I just don't understand. It's the same thing with the Bucks. I got to be a little bit critical of the coaching, because you've got a 17-point lead on a team that's basically 2 stars down. And instead of calling a timeout, you sit there and let your team turn the ball over and over and over again, and let him climb right back in. And then at the end of the game, he's got no timeouts left. So I'm like, he didn't call a timeout for 10 minutes while they're losing the lead, and then they get the end of the game and he's got no timeouts left. So I think you got to put some of this on coaching. And as much as me and you both like Doc Rivers, you can't say that blowing a 26-point lead in the second half and getting outscored 40 to 19 in the fourth quarter. I mean, that's embarrassing. That's absolutely embarrassing. That's the big time quarter. That's the money quarter. You don't want to get outscored 40 to 19 in the fourth.
I mean, I understand that, right now, in today's NBA, people frown on the Larry Brown, Pat Riley style of coaching, jumping into guys' faces and screaming at them and telling them, the way they've got to do things. But I mean, these guys are too timid, these coaches on the bench. I mean, like you said, Doc Rivers, you can't just sit there, fold your arms and say, guys, do the best you can. At some point, you've got to either change your rotation, do something, press the ball more, do something, come up with some kind of drop a play. Just, figure out something to change your strategy a little bit. Just try something, right. Go into a 4 corners. Take a page out of Dean Smith and go to a 4 corners if that works. Anything.
Well, in the case of Mike Budenholzer for the Bucks, Kevin Durant was the only guy in the second half that was a real threat. Don't get me wrong. Jeff Green was 6 for 6 from 3-point land in the first half, but he didn't hit a shot in the second half. So the only guy that's really killing you is the guy that's got 50 points. Double team him. Right. Deny him the basketball. Don't let him beat you. Make someone else beat you. I mean, it's not that tough. And then with Doc, we talked about it, the 2 games they won in a row, it was all because they had a bench, and because Shake Milton came in off the bench, and because Maxey came in and Howard came in. Hell, he didn't even play any of those guys last night. They go down 109-106, and Dwight Howard plays 9 minutes. Maxey played 1 minute. I think he may have been a little banged up, but Milton played 13 minutes. Hill played 12 minutes. The only guy that played any serious minutes was the Bull off the bench. So I just don't understand it. I'm confused as to what the coaching strategy was, because there was no coaching strategy.
It's almost like he froze. He was like a deer in headlights. I don't know what to do. I don't know. Unless he just, I would think, and we give him, you and I both give him credit all the time, for having the pulse of his team. Maybe when he's looking at Ben Simmons going, 4 of 14 from the foul line, and Tobias Harris throwing up a freaking night, the worst night of maybe his pro career. Maybe he just didn't trust, like you said, the Shake Miltons and those guys. He had to. I mean, we've seen it before. I mean, I always go back to the John Starks 3 for 18, and you're looking at Pat Riley going, Pat, put him on the bench. Put anybody out there. Let anybody throw up shots, because he is on falling. But sometimes these coaches seem to go, well, if I give them enough time, their shot will come back. You can't do that in the playoffs. I mean, you can do that in the regular season, but the playoffs are a different animal. And if the coach doesn't recognize that, then nobody recognizes that.
No, I agree. I mean, I wish I could explain it, but, blowing a 17-point lead, blowing a 26-point lead, not sticking to what won you the 2 games. I mean, he came out himself
in his post-game interview and said the reason we won the game last night after game 3 was our bench. And he talked about Shake Milton, and he talked about Dwight Howard's contribution. He talked about Thibault, and then he doesn't play them in the next game. And I just don't understand it. And, they're in big trouble now. I got to be honest. I mean, I didn't think that the Hawks really were going to be able to match up with the Sixers. And if you look at the games, honestly, they really haven't, except in the fourth quarter. 40-19, they outscored and I just keep saying that because I can't believe it. They outscored them 40-19 in the fourth quarter, and still only won by a couple points. Only won by 3 points. So obviously, that was a big meltdown. And I got to be honest, Doc's going to be under some heat if they lose in this round and if they get taken out by the lower seeded Hawks when they had such a tremendous season. And we gave them credit for the regular season. But, you lose right now, it's all for naught.
Well, the other thing you got to worry, I don't want to say worry about, but you got to start really opening up our eyes and realizing one thing that Atlanta has going for them over everything is everybody's healthy. Of all the teams, they're not dealing with any major problems. So, I mean, if Chris Paul can't play, if Kawhi can't play, we already know Kyrie is going to be day-to-day probably throughout the finals. How bad is Harden's hamstring, if that's what it turns out to be? It's going to be real interesting to see if those are the 4 teams left standing. And right now, they have the legs up. I don't know if we can sleep on Atlanta anymore. I don't know if we can sit there and think that they can't pull this off and go the whole way. Especially, I don't know. What have you been hearing? The reports I was looking at of Kawhi all day long is worse than expected. Worst case scenarios. But we've also seen in the past where sports writers throw that up against the wall there's nothing else to write about. So, have you seen anything or heard anything on Sirius today?
I've heard that it's a knee sprain. I mean, I don't believe there's any structural damage, but they got to play again tomorrow. And if he wasn't a go on Wednesday night, what makes you think he's going to be 100% and ready to go on Friday night? I mean, I seriously, I think where there's smoke, there's usually fire, and I honestly believe there's a good chance he misses the game again. I really do. He traveled with the team to Utah and tried to go, but they, evaluated him pregame, had him work out at the shoot around, and he just couldn't do it, and they sent him back to Los Angeles. So, that's not a good sign. And I think you're right. I mean, the Hawks are missing DeAndre Hunter, but honestly, he wasn't playing that great before he got hurt, and he's out for the rest of the playoffs. That's one guy, but honestly, he wasn't playing his best basketball. So they've actually played better since he went down. And Cam Reddish has been a no-show for the playoffs, but he's been a no-show ever since he got to Atlanta. So no surprise there. Other than that, they are pretty much healthy. So you could be right. I mean, they could be the last man standing because they've got, 4 of their 5 starters out there.
4 of their 5 starters. And if Chris Paul's not out there, right now they have the best point guard if Chris Paul's not there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big story. Let's be honest. The Suns have dominated. The Suns have been the best team in the NBA, in my opinion, over the last since the playoffs began. I mean, they've been the hottest team. They took out the defending champs in 6 games, knocked them out 4-2, and then they swept the MVP and the Nuggets with Jokic. So, and the reason was because of Chris Paul. So if Chris Paul can't play or misses any games in the Western Conference Finals, that could be tough to overcome. The good thing is, the Suns have got a really solid team, and they go 9 or 10 deep. So they're not, I wouldn't just rule the Suns out if they, if Chris Paul's not able to go for a game or two. I would have in the past, but after watching them play and seeing Cameron Payne out there and seeing Craig and those guys, I'm a lot more comfortable with them after seeing how they played in the first 2 rounds.
And we got to talk to about is Tyronn Lue, who's doing a very good job on the bench for the Clippers. You and I, didn't love the choice of him. Didn't hate it, but didn't make it out to be a big deal. But right now, he's showing that he has at least coached a team to a championship, and it shows up. And then Paul George, who looked like he was, heading down to becoming, I don't know, a secondary, a tertiary option. Not exactly, it was going to be it's Kawhi and then a big drop to Paul George. But Paul George the other night looked like the Paul George in Indiana. So, I mean, you got to give Paul George some credit coming, for picking up the slack when they had to.
You're 100% right. I mean, I've been critical of him as well, but when the chips were down and Kawhi was ruled out, it all fell on his shoulders. And not only did he answer the bell, but you're right as well. Tyronn Lue came up with a pretty damn good game plan, and he does deserve credit. I mean, they were down 2-0, and everybody was leaving the Clippers for dead. And then they came back a little bit, but then Kawhi got hurt, and everybody's like, "Oh, well, they're not going to be able to win it now without him." But 37 points and 16 rebounds later, and Paul George is picking up the slack. And that guy, he had his best game as a Clipper, in my opinion. Not only was he fabulous on offense and hitting shots all over the place, but he really made it a point to get rebounds. I mean, that was his career high in a playoff game with 16 rebounds, and they needed him to. I mean, Marcus Morris isn't really a great rebounder, even though he's a big guy, and Zubac was getting boxed out by Rudy Gobert, and so it kind of fell on Paul George's shoulders to get some boards off the glass, and he delivered in a big way. So, I'm critical of him, but I'm also going to give him credit when he deserves it because he was huge.
Yeah, I didn't see the game the other night with the Clippers, but maybe you noticed it. They said the way they attack Gobert, who's like, one of the best defensive players in the league, the matchup they put on him gave him fits the other night. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I mean, they were trying to get him outside and make him be a on the ball defender out on the perimeter. But he's better at that than people gave him credit for. But they were doing some pretty good moves with the high-low game and the pick and rolls and just creating mismatches and kind of working the ball away from Gobert, which is probably the great decision because he's their best defender. And it paid off. And now they're up. They've got a chance to close it out tonight or tomorrow night in Los Angeles. So they get to play at home, and they get a chance to seal the deal and go to the Western Conference Finals.
All right. Well, let's give a real good look right now. Gun to head. Atlanta or the Nets in the finals from the East, or give it to Milwaukee or Sixers coming back. Which do you think?
Man, I got to be honest. I don't know. I would have to see whether or not James Harden or Kyrie, one of the two, if they could come back, I would go all Nets. I just don't know if Durant can keep this up. At this pace. But gun to the head, like you said, I would go Nets. Yeah,
I totally agree with you. The only reason I got a little bit riding that I'd love to see Atlanta do it, first of all, for Nate McMillan. I mean, here's a guy who just got crapped on by everybody, and this is kind of his ride to glory. I don't know if he'll ever have the stars align again for him like this. So, kind of for Nate McMillan, I'd like to see land and sneak through. But I think it is the Nets. I think the Nets. Something tells. Although I don't think Kyrie's coming back, I think Harden will be ready, and the two of them will be able to stand up to almost from what we've seen. Because Milwaukee lacks heart, and the Sixers lack heart right now. I think they'll be able to get through and get them to the final. How about out west? I mean, a lot is depending on Chris Paul, because this was but like you said, the Suns have a good team. We saw it last year before they got Chris Paul. They were heading in the right direction when they were in the bubble. So Chris Paul was the final piece, and he spent this year kind of preparing this team as their mentor on the floor. So maybe him being down a game or two isn't going to hurt them as much. What do you think out west?
Yeah, I'm going with the Suns, man. I mean, until I see somebody beat them, I'm rolling with Phoenix. I mean, they've been the best team that I've seen from top to bottom since the playoffs began. And they were, as you mentioned, probably the best team in the bubble and went undefeated. They still didn't make the playoffs, but, they couldn't really be beat because they started to play together. And, DeAndre Ayton started to really become a really good pro basketball player. I mean, this guy isn't super flashy, but he gets 20 points a game. He gets 10 rebounds a game, and he's become a really superior low post defender. So you give that, you got that down low, and then you've got all these guys that are just great athletes and that can score and play defense. I just don't think that the Clippers match up very well against the Suns because honestly, nobody does.
All right, we're going to go off the court a little bit right now. And I just want to put a question to you. I don't know if you'll be answering to this, but how the hell do any of these guys who own sports teams become super rich and millionaires? If you go by the people who own the Pelicans, and everybody knew they shouldn't have hired Stan Van Gundy. He barely lasted a year on the job because he got hired in June last year, July, whatever. So he didn't even make it a year. They're paying him whatever they're paying him on whatever kind of contract this is where you sit there and you go, how the hell did these guys ever make money if they can make stupid decisions like this consistently? Because like you and I all year long, how the hell did he get the job? And now you got it. Well, we'll get to it in a minute. But first of all, do you have the answer to that?
How do they make money?
Yeah.
They make money from the television contracts. I mean, that's where these owners make their money. Before the games ever even played, they get paid out from these deals.
But I'm just saying, how did they ever make their money in the first place when they make these kind of stupid decisions, business decisions?
Well, because they weren't making it picking coaches originally. They were doing it in business, and most of these guys are usually pretty good business guys. But then a lot of times they want to get all involved, or the ownership wants to get involved in the basketball decisions, whereas we've seen it before. You want to get a good front office guy in there to make your decisions. You want to have a Pat Riley. You want to have, a Jerry West. You want somebody in your front office that played basketball, that knows basketball, and that understands how to put together a championship team. And if you don't have that in your front office, you're behind the eight ball before a game's ever played. And that's the problem down there. They've got this guy that is not only the GM for the Pelicans, but he's also, the president or GM for the Saints. And, that makes it difficult in my estimation. And I just think that was a horrible hire. Me and you both, the day that was announced, were like, what? Jeff Van Gundy? We could see, bringing back Jeff Van Gundy, but Stan Van Gundy, it's almost like Jeff refuses to coach anymore. So people just hire Stan because they called Jeff and he said no.
Or they hope Jeff will come over and bail him out, bail little brother out or big brother out. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it is important to get a guy in the front office that sets the tone, Doesn't always have to be. Donnie Walsh was a great GM. Doesn't always have to be somebody who's played the game, but it has to be a basketball lifer. It has to be one of these guys that's been around the game, understands the game, knows scouting, knows how to pick coaches, knows how to put a team together. You can't just have just anybody, as it was shown when Phil Jackson tried to take over the job. Now, here's my big question here. I got a couple of ways I want to go with the next as we take on with the show. First of all, you now have in New Orleans and you have in Dallas maybe the two best young players in the NBA, in Luka Doncic and Zion Williamson. Both of them, seemingly, the word is they're not exactly happy with the teams they're on right now. They don't think that the teams are being built in the right direction. And now they don't have head coaches. We've seen that this is the one sport where players can force the hand of a team and get the trade done when they have to get it done. Now, who do you think could be a coach that you could sit in? I hear they're talking about Becky Hammond. They're talking about Teresa Witherspoon and breaking the glass ceiling. I'm not saying I'm against that, but you got to get these two superstars and kind of get their opinion of who they want to coach them.
Yeah, I think eventually some of the blame has to come back on David Griffin, doesn't it? This guy is the vice president of operations, or the president of operations and the executive vice president of the Pelicans. And, he got rid of Alvin Gentry. That was his call. He tossed Alvin Gentry to the side and chose Stan Van Gundy. And he chose Alvin Gentry to begin with. So there's two coaching moves in the last 3 years that David Griffin is responsible for, and yet he gets to go on making decisions. And that really bothers me, because apparently it's not just whoever the coach is, it's the guy making the decisions that's part of the problem. As you mentioned, Zion's one of the top young players in the game, but they keep shifting who the coach is every year. This is going to be his third coach in 3 years, which is just beyond reproach, ridiculous. And, also they shipped one of his best players in Drew Holiday out of town and sent him to Milwaukee. What are they going to do? Who are they going to bring in to help Zion, and who are they going to get as the coach? I don't know. After hiring Stan Van Gundy, I have no clue where they're going to go with this.
But that's why I'm saying is I know he's young, 2 years in the league, not even 21 years old, if that, 20 years old, if he's that. It's a lot of authority to be given, to give this guy already kind of the LeBron treatment, where an owner will go to him to get the approval of a coach. But, I kind of like New Orleans. I feel sorry, but I like that town and stuff. And I feel so bad that, Anthony Davis abandoned ship on these guys. If Zion abandoned ship, at some point, they got to do something right. It took years and years and years for the Saints to get it right. All you have to do, you got to find somebody to keep the talent in town. And, I think it's very important, if the Pelicans are ever going to become anything, that they have to keep Zion in the fold. So you have to get his approval and figure out who he wants as his coach, who he will let coach him at this point. And I don't know, is there some Duke guys hanging around that might be somebody who would go down there and coach there? Somebody that a Coach K could recommend to Zion? Anybody you think about that maybe would fit in there?
I'm not even 100% sure they will even consult with Zion on this. Should they? Yeah. I think you're right. I think they should. I think they should, bring him in and talk to him and ask him, or at least have him meet with some of these candidates. But I have heard some rumblings that Jacques Vaughn is a candidate. This is a guy who's a player's coach that became the interim coach for the Nets inside the bubble and did a tremendous job, but didn't get the head coaching job. They went with Steve Nash, which has ended up actually working out pretty good. But that's a name that I've heard being thrown around as a possible guy to take over in New Orleans. I've also heard the name Fred Vincent being thrown around. He served as an assistant coach under Monty Williams when he was there. He served as an assistant under Gentry. He also served as an assistant under Van Gundy. This is a guy that Zion knows, and he also is very close with Brandon Ingram, the other star on this team. So, are those guys going to get the job? I don't know, but those are two guys that I think Zion would be happy with. But I'm interested to see what happens if they don't hit on this coach. I wouldn't hold it against Zion for wanting out, because the organization would have then proved 3 times that they can't pick a guy who can coach him.
Yeah.
I mean eventually the organization has to prove something to the player. The player's proving himself on the court. He averaged 30 points and started in the All-Star game on his first season, really getting to play. So he's doing his job. At some point, the organization needs to prove their commitment to winning and their ability to make the decisions necessary to win.
And the Mavericks too. Another guy, Luka, supposedly isn't happy because they got rid of Donnie Nelson, and so he's airing his problems there. And Rick Carlisle has been, a rock in Dallas since he got there. 12 years. I mean, that's a lifetime as a basketball coach. 12 years. You don't really make it 12 years usually unless you're running off championships like Jackson did in Chicago, or you're Pat Riley in Miami, where you could fire yourself. So Rick Carlisle, and what do you think about the potential of a Teresa Witherspoon or a Becky Hammon sometime soon, relatively soon, getting a chance to coach in the NBA?
I have no problem with them getting a chance to coach in the NBA, and I do think it's coming, and I have no problem with it if they prove themselves worthy. There you go. Do I think that the Pelicans should hire either one of those ladies to coach the team right now? No. They need to get someone who's proven. They need to get someone who's done it before. They need to bring in someone that can understand what it takes to get a team through an 82-game season and then be able to perform in the playoffs. And I'm not 100% sure who that is. You mentioned this at the top of the show. I honestly think Rick Carlisle's the best guy to take over for the Pelicans, and that's who I would hire if I were them.
One of the wacky ones I heard was Mike D'Antoni is being interviewed at one of the jobs. I'm like, how many times is this guy going to be given a shot? Okay, he was out in Phoenix. Okay, he was in New York. Okay, he was in Houston, and we know what he is. He doesn't believe in defense. His team will win 40-plus games in the regular season just because it lends itself to his offense lends itself to winning in the regular season when you could play that jailbreak style of basketball. But when it comes to half court, getting stops, clutch shooting, he doesn't seem to know what to do. And why should he get it? Now, there's one thing. Why should he get his 4th shot before Becky Hammon or Teresa Witherspoon gets their first? That I would have a problem with.
Yeah, and the talk is that D'Antoni is interviewing for the Trailblazers job. He's got an interview on Monday, and they've also are going to interview Hammond, and they're going to interview Chauncey Billups. And I'm with you. I would rather them hire Chauncey Billups or Hammond than to retread D'Antoni once again, because he has proven that he can win in the regular season. His teams can play offense, but once they get into the playoffs, it hasn't worked out even remotely close to working out for him. So I would rather see Chauncey or Hammond or anybody hired in Portland other than D'Antoni, because I don't believe in him, and I would much rather see new blood.
Now, Rick Carlisle is now that he stepped down, of course, immediately. We don't know. I don't know. It just happened today. So, of course, the rumor mill starts. I mean, the Celtics job, because he's got some, through Bird, he's got Celtic, genes or genealogy. Portland would be a good place for him. Carlisle is a very interesting where he'll end up. What do you think about Carlisle going to Boston?
I think that's a potential landing spot for him. But I don't know how that works out with Brad Stevens being Rick Carlisle's boss. That to me presents a dynamic that may not work out, because you've got a guy who's a long tenured coach in the NBA that's done it his way for a long time, and having to rely on a guy who hasn't coached as long and didn't have as much success as him, kind of telling him what to do. I think that might not go well. But I have heard many rumors that Carlisle's been reporting. Obviously, he was just resigned today, but apparently this has been coming, potentially for a while. And reports are, and how true these reports are, I don't know, but there's been plenty of reports saying that Rick Carlisle wants to take over in Milwaukee if they fire their coach. Which, you know what, I kind of thought, I read those reports 2 days ago, and I was kind of like, I don't know, man, why are they talking about that? But then I watched Mike Budenholzer coach the last 2 games, and I'm like, wow, man, whoever wrote those articles knew what the hell they were talking about, because that guy just looks like he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to say that Knoxville Nate could do a better job, but I sure as hell would call a goddamn timeout when my team's given up 17 straight points and relinquished the lead when they've got one of their stars playing. I mean, if ever there was a time for the Bucks to take a game up on the Nets, it was that game. I mean, I just don't understand how you don't you couldn't stop him. He picked up 5 fouls. Then he couldn't really touch him anymore. So he was playing off of him, but instead of switch or double him, they left him on him. And 50 points later and another game down, and Budenholzer's looking like his last name. He's looking like a hoser. And that guy loses his, if they lose this series and he loses his job, I'm not going to feel real bad for him.
It's funny, the amount of openings, and who knows, there might be a couple more openings before we're all said and done. It could be, like you said, with the Bucks. Could be, you never know with Doc Rivers, depending on how bad that looks at the end of that run. But, I mean, there are some, when you think about it, Portland, when you think about, like we've mentioned, New Orleans, and you think about Dallas, I mean, you'd have to think that, I'm surprised that Carlisle's walking away. I mean, I would think Cuban pretty much leaves him alone, I think. I don't think he really bothered him that much. Of course, I'm not there, but maybe him and Luka don't get along, which is hard to believe. But some kind of interesting openings, and you've got stars sitting there waiting for you if you're a coach to go walking in there. I mean, you got Lillard, you got Luka, you got Zion. Hey, you're going to get 30 points a night from those guys. That's a nice stepping stone to start with. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be an interesting offseason for the NBA, but we still got the rest of the playoffs to go and see what happens beyond that. Any NFL thing you've been picking up on?
Yeah, I was just going to say one more thing. I mean, there's 6 coaching vacancies as of today that are available, and my question is, which one is the most attractive? Is it Portland? Is it Zion down there? Is it the Mavericks job? I don't know. I mean, I'm very confused as to if I was a guy that was a potential candidate. I'm not sure which one of these jobs I would want. In fact, I may want to sit this out and check the jobs next year, to be honest with you.
Well, I think right now I look at Portland's in a win now stage. I mean, their guys are young veterans on that team. They're about the 30-year-old mark. But the only thing is, if you come in there, is Lillard still going to want to be there? McCollum still want to be there? How many of those players are going to be still there for you? Down in, I think the most attractive is New Orleans. Zion.
I do too. I mean, you've got a decent roster down there.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as I've been picking on David Griffin for his coaching hires or his coaching moves, I do kind of like their roster. I mean, I like the young nucleus of talent. I'm interested to see what they do with that roster in the offseason, because they do need another piece. There's no doubt about that. They need to add somebody to help the load for Zion, but I do like that roster overall, probably the best. We've talked about Portland on this show quite a bit, and I like Damian Lillard. I just don't like anybody else on their roster, and I think there are a couple dudes short up there, and I'm not sure that I'd want to be thrown into that mix right away, because like you said, they are in a win now mode, but I'm not sure they're ready to win now. I mean, they've gone out in the first round 2 years in a row.
True, and that's the whole problem is, Lillard has to stay there to make it work, and Lillard has to stay there to make it attractive for a coach, the good coach, to come there. Now, there's another situation where if I'm the ownership, I might bring Lillard in as my star and sit down with him and say, these are the coaches we're going to look at. Do you have a favorite? Because it's important that he's happy and he wants to stay there. If you can go out there and get the greatest coach in the world, but if it's not who Lillard wants, he's been there. He's given them, 10, 12 years now? How many years has Lillard been in the league? 8.
Lillard, he's been there at least, 8 or 9 years?
Yeah.
For sure. He started in 2013. So he's been in the league 8 years. 8, 9. This will be his 9th season.
Yeah. So he's 30 years old. He can't afford to sit there and wait another 3 or 4 years. I mean, he has to see his team becoming what the Suns are now next year. He's 30 years old. He'll be 31 next season. Right. So he needs to know that next year they're at least a conference semifinal team, if not a conference final team, if not an NBA final team, for him to sit there and go, yeah, this is okay. Otherwise, I question why he's sticking around, other than just scoring points.
Yeah, I think we can both probably agree that the worst opening is the Magic. I don't know. There's nothing down there. I mean, they got Cole at the 3rd overall pick, which is about the only he got.
The Magic hasn't been a good.
Aaron Gordon. Those were their 3 good players, in my opinion. Nicolas, Evan Fournier, and Aaron Gordon. Those were their 3. Their 3 pieces, in my opinion, and all 3 of those guys are gone now. So you're left with Cole Anthony, R.J. Hampton, Markelle Fultz, and Jonathan Isaac, which 2 of them are coming off major injuries, and the other ones might as well be because they are not good. So right. I think that you're definitely talking about the worst job being the Magic. However, that may be a good place for somebody to start because there'll be no pressure on them. And that's one of the things that I was wanting to mention about the Hawks. one of the reasons they've done so well in these playoffs is because no one expected them to do well. First off, no one gives Nate McMillan any respect, which he should, command. But also, no one picked them to beat the Knicks, and sure as hell, nobody gave them a chance to beat the Sixers. So they're kind of playing with house money, and that's a nice thing in the NBA.
Yeah, the only thing, I'll tell you one thing. If I was going to give D'Antoni one place, I would put him in Orlando. And I'll tell you why, because his team would at least be entertaining, maybe steal about 20, 25 wins, give the fans a reason to come out. I think as you just pointed out, one of the worst rosters you could ever find. To give somebody their first crack at it with no talent, there's not much they can do with it. I mean, look at what Stan Van Gundy, who we both said we don't respect, when he was up in Detroit and the talent wasn't there in Detroit. Look at how bad that team was. You know what I mean? So I would hate to see a young coach get thrown into Orlando, and after 2 years, 3 years, they've won 36 games in 3 years, and all of a sudden, see you later. Give that to D'Antoni. If he can get them to be exciting and get and make it worthwhile for NBA fans to show up down there, give him that one. Let him go back there. Don't give him a great team so we can see the usual script of, we did great during the regular season. Unfortunately, I want to go home and play some golf.
Yeah, no, and actually with the Mavericks opening, that's 7 openings because I left out the Pacers. The Pacers is also available, but I still stick. There always seem to be available. You can be the coach of the Pacers every other year. Since Carlisle and Vogel left, it's kind of been a revolving door. To be honest, I still would probably rank the Celtics job number 1. Simply because not only do you have Jason Tatum, but you've got Jaylen Brown and you have Marcus Smart. That's 3 really good players. And then I like the young talent that they have too. I like Grant Williams. I like the other Williams. I like Edwards. I like Romeo Langford. They've got a lot of really good young talent that they drafted. Robert Williams was the name I was forgetting there. I like him too. So I think that the Celtics job is by far the best if you were looking to, go into the best situation and not have to build from the ground up.
Yeah, and it's in the East too. So who knows? I mean, although the East is getting more and more competitive, it's still not what you have to face out West. So that might attract Carlisle. That would be very interesting to see if he goes there. With this wide open, the last 10 minutes, I wanted to open it up to talk a little bit more about the NCAA NFL play or NCAA football playoffs. Now they're talking about the 12 team with the byes and everything else. And what's your first thoughts on that? One thing I've heard it's really the team that getting to get the biggest screwing is Notre Dame because they'll never get a bye now.
Yeah, well, I mean, whose fault's that? That's Notre Dame's fault. If they were to join the ACC, not only would that not be a problem anymore, but they would have a pretty nice little trek right into it because all they'd have to do is beat Clemson, which they were able to do once this year. So I don't think they're going to next year, but if they were to stay in the league that they played in, they'd have a shot. So
if Notre Dame goes anywhere, I want them in the Big Ten. They belong in the Big Ten. They're Indiana. They're in the middle of the Big Ten. They're an hour away from Ohio State, an hour away from Michigan, an hour away from East Lansing. They belong there. They don't belong in playing against Carolinas and Florida. They belong in the Big Ten. That's where they should go, and they should get off there, get the stick out of their butts, and figure it out. They've had their way with the NCAA, and me being a Notre Dame fan, even saying this forever. They've had their way with the NCAA, being able to dictate what they want to do. So if you're going to go somewhere, go to the Big Ten. Yeah, you're going to have to fight with Ohio State and Wisconsin and all these other teams for the championship of the Big Ten, but at least you'd earn it. You know what I mean? I just don't see the ACC. They'll probably take the ACC because, like you said, it's the easiest way for them to go.
Well, they're already playing. They're already playing in the ACC and the other sports.
Yeah, I know.
They're already playing in ACC. The last 3 or 4 years, they've been playing a partial, at least, ACC schedule.
No, I know, but I say give Maryland back to the ACC and put Notre Dame in the Big Ten.
Hey, I'm cool with that. I just don't see it happening, brother. You wouldn't get an argument. You wouldn't get an argument out of me. I'd love to beat the Irish up every year. Have them bring them into Columbus.
I think it probably is what they need to be attached to a Big Ten to get the recruits. You know what I mean?
I agree.
They'll be able to go up against Ohio State and Michigan because they can say, look, if we win the Big Ten, we're in. If we're in second in the Big Ten, we're in. And I just love the fact that they're opening up the 12 teams. I mean, think about Cincinnati, how they belonged in the championship last year, or at least given a shot at it.
Well, in
Oklahoma too.
Oh, and I think about my Buckeyes. There was 3 years there where we lost one game and we didn't get a chance to play in it. And the 1 year was basically because you played Clemson last year and got blown out. And I'm like, well, yeah, fact. That is a fact. But what the hell does that have to do with this year? That was in 2018. After we had lost to Clemson in 2017. I mean, it was a game that got out of hand, but honestly was about a 3-point game with 2 minutes left in the first half, and things went downhill from there. But regardless, there's 3 seasons where they had one loss and essentially got left out. So not only will it help these other teams like Central Florida, the team you mentioned, Coastal Carolina,
Boise State,
Cincinnati. These teams will have a chance now to at least be given an opportunity to make something and to win the national championship. And I think it's great. I think it's a step that needs to be taken. It's the logical next step, right? Like we went to a 4-team playoff format. The next step is to make it a 12-team.
Yeah, and I think and you earn the buys. I mean, if I have to hear one more of these guys talk about, oh my God, you're gonna have to play 13 games, you're gonna have to play 14 games. You don't worry about these guys that they're training, 365 days a year. Don't worry about that and everything else. But no, they can't play an extra game or two. I mean, like you said, give up that easy win and only play 10 games during the season.
Yeah, I mean that's one way of doing it. Taking it back to taking it back a game and getting rid of one of the conference games or getting rid of one of the out of conference games. If you're really worried about these kids playing too many games, then you can do that, I guess. But honestly, I haven't heard any of the kids saying that they're against it, and I think a lot of these kids welcome the opportunity to play an additional game or two if necessary, if it gives them a chance to play for the title.
Exactly. So, all right, we're coming down to the wrap-up time. Big weekend coming up for you, Father's Day. Any big plans?
Yeah, we're doing a big brunch on Sunday, so I'm looking forward to that. Be with the whole family and be brunching it up. So.
And next week, we have 2 big guests that Nate has lined up for us. Tennessee people be tuning in next week. Nate, tell them who's coming on our show next week.
Yeah, we're going to have Chris Lofton on Monday, one of the greatest players in Southeastern Conference basketball history. He's agreed to come on Monday, and then we're going to have the greatest receiver in Tennessee history and one of the greatest receivers in the SEC. History and Joey Kent. I think he's going to try to come on Thursday, if not the following Monday. But we're going to have those 2 big guests coming up here next week, and should be a great show. So everybody tune into that and join us.
Exactly. Put on your orange show up and watch us talk about a little volunteer history, a lot of SEC action, plus get what they think about what's going on in the pros and what's going on. So it should be an exciting week next week. Everybody, thanks for tuning in tonight. Guess what? Garrett Cole, another week, another excuse. Now he uses the sticky stuff so he doesn't hurt players when he throws the ball hard. So thank you, Yankees, for another excuse. I'm going to pick on this guy all year long. Get ready for this all summer.
Because he's kind of asking for it, to be honest.
Well, his last start, 4 strikeouts in 8 innings. Oh, and the sticky stuff doesn't help you. Okay. Anyways, people, have a great night. We will be back next week. It's the Safety and the Sports Writer with Knoxville, Nate, and Big Joe. Looking forward to it. Again, Nate, have a great Father's Day. Everybody, enjoy the weekend. We're gonna get the summer back we missed last year. So everybody, enjoy yourself. Get out there and have some fun.
Yeah, have an extra fun this summer to make up for last year.
Exactly.
You're listening to The Safety and the Sports Writer on Northeast Streaming Sports.